All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You are here with Tom. George will be joining us shortly. So we got a lot to talk about. We got, I think, a lot of good news. Obviously, this was a really good day for the Bitcoin miners. I think good things are happening with Bitcoin. I think good things are happening with the market. We're going to talk about all of that and then take some questions from you guys. Of course, we'll have a bunch of polls. And if you guys could help me out and please smash the like button. That is always a big help to the channel. We are going for 100 likes. We got there last week. 2 weeks ago, for the first time in 3 years, we didn't get 100 likes, but you guys made it up for it big time last week. We blew way by that, so do us a favor. It does help the stream in real time, and I've noticed a lot more people streaming at this time that didn't used to stream. So let people know we're out there by smashing the like button, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. And let's talk about what's going on. So you can see the chart on the screen. This orange line, or gold, that's where Bitcoin was yesterday when the equity markets closed. So you can see we were up on the day, and if you look at IBIT, Bitcoin was up 0.9% today. But the Bitcoin miners took off. Now, it was an up and down week. The week Monday and Tuesday were great. Wednesday and Thursday were awful. Friday was great again. I mean, you've got some stocks up, double digits, 15%, 20%. And even some of the big stocks were up pretty big numbers. So this was a really good day. I think it rounded out the week. When we take a look at the week that we just had, and we're going to look at those soon. I want to go through the numbers earlier. Please remind me in the comments. I want to go through all the numbers earlier. I've been doing that so late in the stream that I'm afraid people are missing, what's going on. So I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to get here, and then I want to go through all the numbers. So Spin Second Surf said, Tom, admitted miners Cleanspark Mara are not up for the week, but in fact they are up for the week. So we're going to go through that chart. We're going to go through those exact numbers. They're up for the week, they're up for the month, and they're a couple of those are lagging behind some of the other Bitcoin miners in the last week, because some of these guys just had breakout weeks. I think there were 3 Bitcoin miners that were up in the neighborhood of 30% just this week. So, those are huge numbers to try to keep up with. But this is what we've been looking for, and this is what we need. The Bitcoin miners have been punished to the extent that we need these reverse days where Bitcoin's up 1% and the Bitcoin miners are up 10% and 20%. Midway, number 1, thank you very much. Extremely generous. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for being a member. Midway 1 said, during BitDeer's earnings call, they implied that they're planning to reach close to 150 exahash by Q3 2026 using just Seal A2s and A3s. So what he means by that, for those who don't know, BitDeer makes their own machines, and the A2 and the A3 are very efficient. They actually have an A4 machine that is theoretically going to come out, and goes on to say, then the SealMiner A4 at 6 joules per terahash or better will probably start shipping in Q3 of 2026. So I'm really mad because I'm mad at myself. Midway's been pointing this out for quite some time, and I had a plan to build out a position in BitDeer, and I really missed it by one day. And then ever since then, I've been just looking at it, feeling like I'd be chasing it because it's been on a spectacular run. And the truth is,
welcome to Talkin Investing.
Probably it's still, in my opinion, a good time to start dollar cost averaging in right now, because it's not back to its previous highs from the last 12 months. And, if this thing's going to be, he's talking about 150 exahash. Even if it's going to be 80, half that, 75 or 80 exahash, it's going to be one of the big players in the field. They make their own machines, so that's cost effective. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on at BitDeer, so that's definitely an exciting stock to keep our eye on And I do think it's going to be it's going to be a good rest of the year, in my opinion. So for the Bitcoin miners and for Bitcoin, I'm going to show you a breakout that we just had that I think signals the next big leg up for Bitcoin over the next, 3 to 6 months, whatever the case may be. Barry, member for 32 months. Thank you, Barry. Tom, will you be adding Griffin to the miners list? So that's a good question. And Barry brings that up because Griffin is quote unquote merging or buying Hut 8's Bitcoin mining company. So I'm going to go through that in more detail. Griffin is effectively at nearly zero. So in that merger of those two companies, American Bitcoin, I think it's called. So Hut 8's portion of the merger is going to represent 98% of the total stock. So this is a backdoor by merging with a dying. Griffin's been around. We've been talking about them for years and years, but they're a dying brand. They're going to do a merger, and Hut 8's piece of it's going to be 98% of the merger. Now Hut 8 owns 80% of that company, so they'll own 80% of the 98%. But then I assume they'll start selling and diluting. So the question is, not only are we going to add Griffin to the mining list, which I think we certainly should. And by the way, Griffin's going to change their name to American Bitcoin Mining. So, they're saying that Griffin's buying American Bitcoin Mining, but in every way, this is just a backdoor into going public for American Bitcoin Mining. And I'm going to show you some stuff. I think Hut 8's out of the Bitcoin mining business. So, yes, I think we're going to add Griffin, which will ultimately be called American Bitcoin if this all goes through, which they're hoping and expecting it to go through in the third quarter of this year. And then I have a feeling we're going to be deleting Hut 8 because I think they're going to turn more of a pure play into an energy play and high performance. And I have a slide in their investor presentation that they put out this month that basically so much as says so. So I feel like that's highly like, I think we got George coming in. I hear him in the background.
Can you hear me?
George, I hear you.
How are you?
I see you. Let me fix the...
It's loud, so I'm going to have to mute.
Okay. I'm
ready to talk whenever you're ready to listen.
Let me fix the screen. All right, now your screen should show correctly. Can everybody see George? Can everybody hear George?
Buy Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin.
We have a brand new George. I'm excited to hear what you have to say today because you've been a little bit nervous lately. So you want to...
I've been nervous?
Well, you tell me. You wanna put your 2 cents in here before we go on?
I don't know if I'm nervous, like nervous. I just, you see a little reprieve coming up. You know what I mean? It's part of the game. I'm not nervous overall. I just think we're getting ahead of the horse because we need to wait until July before things kick in, I think.
So do you think we're going to have one more dip or just kind of go sideways?
I think there is a dip coming.
All right. So if there's a dip coming,
yeah,
are you going to buy the dip?
I don't know. That's the $1 million question.
Well, let's put that question out to the field.
This is going to be
our poll.
I'm thinking about buying a lot of altcoins right now. That's what I'm thinking about buying.
I'm just typing a poll.
How do I turn this off?
Okay, so
Sorry.
question number
We got
one.
Feedback.
That's no problem. If there's a dip in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, will you buy the dip? This is the poll that is up. And what I mean is a dip, in the next month. Not, this isn't an open-ended question from now until the end of time. If there's a dip coming up, I believe ultimately we're headed towards 150,000. I don't know that that's the end of the run either. I just think next stop is even if we have a pullback, and we may very well retest some lower numbers. We frequently do. We've had a huge run in Bitcoin. We're starting to consolidate. We could go down and test something lower, but I'm looking to break the all-time high, and then I'm looking to break 120, and then I'm looking to break 150. Now, the only caveat to all that is I do get worried when, myself included, everybody starts to get this optimistic. So I'd be interested to see where everybody else is at, or if I'm just the only one. We got 31 likes. Do us a favor and smash the like button. We missed our likes 2 weeks ago, but last week you guys made up for it big time, so it is much appreciated. We need those 100 likes for the stream to survive. So let's go through, I want to go through what the Bitcoin miners did this week, because this was a good week. And a lot of times, obviously this was a great Friday, but a lot of times, Wednesday and Thursday were red. They weren't good. So it's this mixed bag. And unless you take a step back and look at what's going on, sometimes your emotions may feel like things are awful when maybe they're okay, or maybe sometimes they're even good or great. So I want to go through. I gotta do one thing here. Give me just a second. I didn't fix these. All right, so this is going to take me just 1 minute, and then we'll go through all the numbers. Yeah, I mean, this was a good week. Just going to start with these three. Almost done. See, I thought I was done early. All right, that looks like everything. So let me bring this chart up. And I'm just telling you right now, I think you guys are going to be surprised. We're going to look at 4 or 5 charts, and I'm glad we're doing this early. Like I said, I've been doing this way too late in the program. This is some of the important information that we need to see. And I want to start getting to some of the info earlier in the stream, so you guys can try to keep me on track, and George, you can try to keep me on track as well, though, so that we get to the not just the conversation, which is important as well, obviously, but let's get to the numbers. So let's do it. From last Friday to this Friday, Bitcoin. So this was last Friday, and this is this Friday. So let's see if I've got that right. Yeah, I mean, it's up less than 1%. So if we go back to this chart, oh, sorry, that's the wrong chart. Bitcoin, 1%. Look at what the Bitcoin miners did. In a week where Bitcoin spent the entire week consolidating, and it really didn't move up or down too much inside of this range. We'll go to the 1 day and take a look. You've got Cypher up 30%, TerraWolf up 29%, HUT 23%, Iron 19%. Remember, Bitcoin was up 1%, Core 16%, Bit Digital, which I am going to take off this list, 14%, Hive 13%. So Riot 8, BitDeer 8, Bitfarms 6, CleanSpark 6, Marathon 3. So when it seems like CleanSpark and Marathon had a bad week, CleanSpark was up 6% on a week where Bitcoin was up 1%. By the way, when we go year to date, CleanSpark's the best performing stock of the year. So, you know, there's a reason sometimes these lag on any given week because they've already run out ahead. But every single Bitcoin miner green this week. Even Marathon was 3x what Bitcoin did. But you can look, I mean, how many of these in double digits? How many of these over 20%, 30%? Jeff, welcome to the stream. Jeff said, loaded up on CleanSpark, and thanks for the super chat. Loaded up on CleanSpark calls for the next 2 weeks. $10.50 and $11 strikes. Am I Looney Tunes thinking we have quite the setup? So I don't think you're Looney Tunes. I will say, you know, for those of you who don't trade in options, 1 and 2 week options are very short. So if you don't have experience, you know, please be careful with options. But if you do have experience and you know what you're doing, and you've got stop losses and all that kind of stuff, I think we are in, you're looking at this chart. I mean, had somebody done the exact same thing Jeff just did last week for Cypher or TerraWolf or HUT, when a stock's up 30%, you know, it's in the money. Strikes can be up 100% or 200% or 300%. So, you know, you can make multiples on your money with these big types of moves. And I think my opinion is we just consolidated for a week. So I do think the next move is up, you know, and if it's not, then, you know, if it's not the next 2 weeks, maybe it's the 2 weeks after that. It's always hard to say, but good luck. And I hope you're right, because CleanSpark probably all in is still my largest position. So, well, if you win, I win. So good luck. And Ty is saying, good luck. 95% of people will lose money doing calls or puts. So if you're buying calls and puts, it's true. More people make money selling calls, but it's also much more dangerous selling calls, and it's much, much more dangerous selling puts. So, you know, it's all tricky business. It's one of those things I say, crawl before you walk before you run, and be careful with options. But I do know a lot of people, a lot of our members, and myself included, have benefited from options, you know, if you get the timing right. So obviously that's the deal with the entire stock market. Do you get the timing right? But there's a really good setup coming, and we're going to look at the 1 week Bitcoin 1 week chart, and that's where I see, you know, a shift that we've been talking about on this channel for 3.5 months. It's here. And so I think good things are ahead. You can never look at just one indicator. So, you know, obviously not financial advice. Do your own due diligence. These are super highly volatile stocks, as is proven by the chart you're looking at, right? Cypher was up 30% this week. For those of you who are a little bit older, like myself, you remember a stock market your whole life. I mean, things didn't move 30% in a year, right? That'd be a home run year. Now we get things, we have sections that are so volatile. We get that move in a week. In the Bitcoin miners, we've had that kind of move in 1 day. So these are smaller cap companies, although most of these on the list are now over $1 billion, but they're in that $1 to $5 billion range, which compared to the overall market is still very small cap company, and it can have big volatile moves up and down, which we have been experiencing. This week, we're on the right side of the volatility at long last. last week we were on the right side of the volatility. Right? This was last week. So, you know, Bitcoin had a better week. It was up 6%. So last week was more win some, lose some. But BitDeer was up 29% last week against 6% against Bitcoin. So what did BitDeer do this week? BitDeer was up another 8% on top of that this week, on a week where Bitcoin was up 1%. So you can see, like, we're starting to get some momentum. And then I wanted to show you, I want to go to the month of May, because it's not just this week that was good. If you go to the month of May, wow, we have had some bad months. And I'm just going to revisit them for a minute because it's worth remembering. Like, we all just suffered massively, and this was brutal. This was brutal for my portfolio. I know it was brutal for a lot of your portfolios. My portfolio was very heavy into Bitcoin, Bitcoin miners, etc. So, you know, we had a February that looked like this. The best Bitcoin miner in February was down 9%. Bitcoin itself was down 17%. Most of the Bitcoin miners were down just in 1 month between 20 and 34%. I mean, February was a disaster, but the bad news is, on top of this move down, this is what happened in March. It was worse. And in March, Bitcoin was only down 2%, but the Bitcoin miners got destroyed even worse than they did in February. So this compounds one on top of the other. So yes, people were in despair. By the middle of March, by the end of March, you know, and we had talked at the beginning of the year about really keeping our eye on the first 90 days. And it turns out the first 90 days were a train wreck. But I did not abandon ship. You know, I tried to look at the bigger picture and see what was going on. And so if you survive February and you survive March, and I'm going to show you somebody big who sold $350 million of Bitcoin in these 2 months, and they're kicking themselves right now, I guarantee you. So because then we turned into April, which all of a sudden, April's good across the board. Bitcoin had a great month. The Bitcoin miners did just fine. We're not getting our giant multiples here in April, but we've shifted from deeply red to nicely green. And now here comes May. Bam. This is the month we're waiting for. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these that are anywhere a 3, 4, or 5 or 6 times leverage what Bitcoin did in so far in the month of May. We need to string a bunch of these kind of months together. We need to have 3 or 4 of these months between now and the end of the year, because it comes in spurts. There's going to be some months that are boring that do nothing, right? But then when they move, we need some of these. We need more than this, right? This isn't getting us even back to where we were, but it's a phenomenal step in the right direction. Let's put up a poll. So 53% will buy the dip if there's a dip. 47% are not going to buy the dip. They've bought enough. They've had enough. Let's just do another simple poll. Well,
I like simple polls, Tom.
Exactly.
I'm wiped out. I had a rough day.
Uh-oh.
It involved the police.
Whoa.
A few hot women.
Oh, it's getting a little bit.
I hope my wife's not watching. They're all alleged.
Allegedly these things happen.
All alleged.
Okay, so simple poll. I'm not even going to put targets yet. Are you bullish or bearish? Ah, I did it again. I got to end this poll and reword it. This is not a yes or no question. Give me another second to repost
yes.
this.
I picked yes. I'm like, yes, I'm bullish. I'm excited. I just think it's going to be a little blip. You know what I mean? Scare everybody.
You think we're going to get a freak out in the middle?
No, I think they're just gonna take it down below 100 real quick and then go nuts. I would shake out the people. You know how skittish everybody is.
I would not at all be surprised to retest. We'll go to the charts next and take a look at some lines. This is what typically happens. When we have a vicious run up, we can consolidate and go sideways, and then sometimes we have another immediate push up. But a lot of other times we go retest some previous lines of resistance and create them as lines of support. So, you know, that's the most typical way that this works. So what you're saying to me makes sense. But, you know, to me, I won't panic if that happens. So I didn't answer the last question. If there's a dip, I will buy. There were 2 days in the last 2 weeks that I thought I was definitely going to get a buying opportunity on the dip, and it didn't happen either time. And one of them was, you know, the day the Fed spoke. I can't believe we didn't get a dip the day Jerome Powell spoke. We always get a knee-jerk panic to that. So this was the first, because I think so many people were like me. They were just waiting, chomping at the bit for a quick dip. So, you know, they didn't get it. But I did add to some positions this week.
Oh, you did? You took the president's advice and bought, huh?
Exactly. So hopefully the one makes more sense. Are you bullish or bearish on Bitcoin in the next 30 days? So this is what I'm saying. In the next month, are we bullish or bearish? And then we'll talk numbers later. And remember, last month, when people were not in a good mindset, and I'm going to show you the consumer's in a very bad place right now. And I think that's another reason to be optimistic. That sounds counterintuitive, but usually the retail investor, the consumer, they're the last to know. They're wrong, you know, frequently.
Did you talk about your friend?
Who?
Did I lose you?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Your friend. Did you talk about your friend Powell about the stock market?
Yeah, I see Sour Melon Gaming saying, Tom, we didn't get a Fed dip because you wanted to buy. I think it's not just me. I think that was the sentiment. I think the setup, that's the normal setup. It's like Jerome Powell, and he said all the nasty things that I thought he was going to say. And the market didn't care. Normally, the market loses their mind collectively for anywhere from 4 to 48 hours, and you get this big buying opportunity. But of course, I think there were too many people on the sidelines waiting for a buying opportunity, so big money didn't give it to them. And that's what I think happened. Pogo said, please hit the like button for Tom and George. They love likes. Thank you, Pogo, for your support and
I
for
can
being
tell
a
you
member.
one thing, something must be getting ready to happen on the Bitcoin pricing, because our stream is the lowest it's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago is the worst stream we've had in 3 years. And it's indicative of the fact that people, I think that was, you know, one of the signs of the bottom. We kept talking about, there were so many signs that we were bottoming out, and, you know, despair and is one of them. Retail investors have had a mass exodus out of this space, and institutions are the ones driving these up. And I'm going to show you one in particular that made heavy moves in while all the retail investors were selling in February and March and April. Especially this was through February and March, when there were 2 disgustingly awful months when a lot of people quit. There was a very big firm that bought all your stock, and we're going to talk about who it is. Should we go there right now and discuss that? Let me find. Okay, so here's a Form 13G that was filed with the SEC. This was filed by Riot Platforms. So when I read this, I then went and took a deeper dive look, and I'm going to show you guys what I found out. Form 13G, this is for Riot Platforms. This is an SEC filing, and it's by Goldman Sachs. Drop in the comments if you're familiar with Goldman Sachs. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most of you probably do, this is not the biggest firm, right? It's a big firm. It's not the biggest firm. It's not, the size of a BlackRock or a Vanguard, but this is the number one coveted job to get, is to get a job sitting at a desk at Goldman Sachs. These are typically usually considered and referred to as, the smartest person in the room type of thing. So, following what Goldman Sachs does usually leads you down the right path. So Goldman Sachs now has a 5.3% interest in Riot. So they had to disclose that. And they just did this. So I dug a little deeper and I said, hey, what is Goldman Sachs doing? So if we take a look, I'm going to go here first. This is Riot Platforms. So they have a 5% interest. Well, guess what? As of March 31st, they have 14 million shares. They just bought almost 11 million of them in this quarter. A 327% increase in their number of shares in Riot in the quarter. So while everybody sold their Riot, guess who bought it? You guessed it, Goldman Sachs. And if you think that's good, if you go to CleanSpark, now on Riot, that makes them now the third largest holder, only behind Vanguard and BlackRock. So we know of the U.S.-based, well-established companies that are trading over $5. By and large, and for the most part, Vanguard and BlackRock are the number 1 and 2 holders in no particular order. It can be either way. But Goldman Sachs has now worked their way up to number 3 in Riot. If you look at what they did in CleanSpark, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're number 6. However, they hold 6 million shares in CleanSpark, 5 million of which they just bought in this quarter, a 452% increase in their position in CleanSpark. So that's a massive move into this, and it puts them at number 6. They're in striking distance. Here we go again. BlackRock and Vanguard, of course, 1 and 2. State Street is very often. State Street and Morgan Stanley are typically in the top 5 or 6 for the bigger companies. But here you've got Goldman Sachs. I mean, this was just one quarter. So is this the beginning of a bigger move in? I don't know, but these are massive. A 452% increase in the interest in CleanSpark. That's even more than Riot. And then I'm going to go to one more. If you go to Marathon, you'll see Goldman Sachs here in 8th place. They have 5 million shares. They added 2 million shares, so that's 58%. That sounds awful because we were just looking at 300% and 400%, but to increase your position in a company by 58% in one quarter is a massive shift into that company. So now, for Goldman Sachs, it's small dollars. I understand that. But these 3 companies in particular, there's 2 or 3 other companies that Goldman Sachs has taken a position in. Those positions have not cracked into the top 10 yet, but there's a couple more out there. But these 3 in particular, I mean, and Riot and CleanSpark in particular, I mean, 350 and 450% increases in one quarter by Goldman Sachs. That's who bought, while the retail investors went away and disappeared and lost interest and lost hope, Goldman Sachs was sitting there buying. So you can see, like with Marathon, BlackRock increased their position. I mean, this isn't big, but they're the number 1 holder in Marathon. BlackRock increased their position. Vanguard increased their position. If we go to CleanSpark, I mean, look at what CleanSpark did. Look what BlackRock did in CleanSpark. They increased their position by 104%. So these are big moves. My point of this is the institutions aren't in most of the Bitcoin miners, the institutions aren't in at all yet. So we still have that entire portion of the run ahead. Now, every single Bitcoin miner is not going to get institutional adoption, but there are several more, in my opinion, that are going to get them and are just starting to get them right now. And that's going to grow and grow and grow. And when that grows and these stocks take off, in the past, that has been when FOMO kicks in, the retail investors start buying, and these things go to the moon. So I think most people have given up on these stocks going to the moon, but this is the same exact process. It is taking a little longer. We've had to endure a lot more suffering along the way this time than in previous cycles. So that's that. So again, if we go back to where we started, this is the month of May. BitDeer's up 59% this month. Bitcoin's up 11%. Bitcoin's having a very good May. It was a sideways week, but it's a very good May. TeraWolf up 40%. HUT 39%. Iron 38%. Cypher 35%. Core Scientific 33%. I mean, those are all 3, 4, or 5x the performance of Bitcoin. Riot 26%. You know, the Marathon and CleanSpark and, Bitfarms continues to struggle. Although we're going to look at the Bitfarms chart, and what's happened lately with Bitfarms is a big deal. So I think you're going to see they've turned the corner. CleanSpark and Marathon look like they're struggling, but they're only lagging in May because they beat everybody else for the rest of the whole year. So there's a little bit of catch-up going on, and I'm going to look at the year-to-date next. But first, I want to get to Jeff. Jeff, thank you very much. Very generous super chat, much appreciated. Public service announcement to always buy supermarkets. Thank you, Jeff. I know Jeff's made a fortune on supermarkets. This call, he's been making this call for a couple of years now, and it just keeps being correct. So I'll mention the tickers: SFM, VLGEA, KR, WMK, IMKTA, ACI. Pull up a chart or 6. Some wild opportunity. So let's just look at one real quick for Jeff here, or we'll look at a couple, because these have been in times where the volatility has been outrageous, and a lot of it's hard to hide from the volatility in this market anymore, even in the ultra large caps. So Sprouts is up 32% year to date. It's up 578% in the last 5 years. And it's up 300 or 400% since Jeff started recommending it in this group. So, there's a winner right there. That's a huge winner. So for those of you interested, take a look in the supermarkets, because a lot of them look like this. And a lot of time, trust me, along the way, as Jeff was recommending it, even back here, I felt like, man, this has already taken the run from $20 to, $40 or $50. I missed it. Well, guess what? It took the run from $50 to $168 after that. So sometimes late is not too late. And I would tell people that's what I think. That's the spot we're in right now with the Bitcoin miners. It's the mistake I'm currently making with BitDeer, in my opinion, because it had such a big run up. I feel like I missed it, but I think, when we look back 6 months or a year from now, we're going to go, wow, that was just the beginning. That's just my opinion, but I'm really taking a close look at that one.
What did you buy, Tom, this week?
I bought 2 things this week. I followed our good friends over at Goldman Sachs, and I bought some more RIOT Actually, I bought 3 things. I bought some more Riot, I bought some more Hive, and I added to my position. This is by far my smallest position, by far. I just made my first purchase of it within the last month. Stock ticker Canaan. So I added to that position. It had a day, I think yesterday or Wednesday or Thursday, was down like 11%. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to add a little bit more there and see if I can keep building out that position. Because I'll go to that chart, because here's a company. This red line, this was prior to, this month, this was their all-time low, even lower than they were in, the crypto winter. So, last week this hit, it took out it had this giant dip down. This doesn't look giant, but, if you measure this, that's a 36% dip down. And so when it did that, I felt like, you know what? This is ridiculously oversold, especially since they just started a month or 2 ago, I think 2 months ago, maybe 3 now. They just started reporting their Bitcoin mining operations. They make their own machines. This is another situation. This is a company, now they are not on the scale of BitDeer, so, be careful. But this is a company that they make their own machines, they sell their own machines, and now they've decided they're going to get much more involved in mining Bitcoin, and they have over 1,000 Bitcoin in their HODL position. So this is a company that, to me, for them to be at their all-time low is crazy time. So, on a small market cap stock that's trading under $1, these are where you can get quick 5Xs. So, yes, it's higher risk, but it's higher reward. And how much risk is it, honestly, just off of its all-time low? It's not performing at an all-time low, I can tell you that, in my opinion. So, this is a little more speculative for me. Yes, it is my smallest position, but I added to it. And I added to Hive because I just think Hive is another one that's, everybody's just overlooked Hive. So I'll go to a chart and show you why I think Hive has so much room left to run. And they put out a press release this week, so we can talk about that press release as well. And if you guys can do us a favor and smash the like button, appreciate everybody who's already smashed the like button. We're at 67. We're going for 100 and then 200. We used to get 100 every time and sometimes 200 while we were live. 1 week, 2 weeks ago, we missed it. And I think that marked the bottom, George. We kind of
calling it 2 weeks ago. That was the bottom.
We called the bottom a couple of times here. I think there were 2 critical days, maybe 3, that really in combination signaled total capitulation and a total turnaround in not just Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, but in the stock market. For all those people that were in, I'm going to sidetrack myself. I hope I don't forget where I was going, because I think this.
I just looked at the 10K challenge.
How much? It was
$4,000. Didn't you hear me? $4,000.
Yeah, so it's up $1,000 since we looked last week.
And it got back down to like 2,200.
Right, so it's almost doubled. So that's what's going on. We're moving in the right direction. So if we look, this was May 6th. I took a screenshot. This is the fear and greed index, not of cryptocurrency, of the overall market. And why I took this screenshot on May 6th, 1 month ago, the market was in extreme fear at 3. It spent multiple days at 3 or 4. This was the worst, most extreme fear week in the history of this measurement. So to me, I'm looking at it. So that puts you back at the beginning of April. And really what it puts you is we had Tariff Day on April 2nd in the United States. The next week, the market went into a panic mode. I mean, it was worse than when we shut the whole world down, right? The market, into everybody in the market, everybody came out and called for a recession. Everybody said this is the biggest disaster. There's no fixing it. We're going to be paying for this for years to come. And the market tanked. And then the conversation became, don't expect a V-shaped recovery because this is a disaster. This is going to last forever. Well, guess what? I'm going to go right to this chart because that looks an awful lot like a V to me. This is what the NASDAQ has done. And, you know, if we look, I don't know why this other side of this line isn't showing up. Maybe it's over here. Boom. Here's the S&P 500 V-shaped recovery. So just for those of you interested, right? This day was Monday, April 7th. April 8th is the day I called that I thought it was the bottom. But April 7th really had already bottomed. So, and we were down, right? It was panic time. The S&P was down 21%, but it gets worse. The Qs, the NASDAQ, on that same day, the NASDAQ was down almost 26% off of its recent highs from just a month and a half ago. So that's a collapse. Like, that's a full-blown bear market. 30% and people start talking about crash. So what happened from that day? Up in a straight line. A perfect V-shaped recovery. So, you know, to George's point, are we going to retest some stuff? Well, you'll see, you know, we get things like this. There's a gap here. Are we going to go fill that gap? Maybe. Maybe we'll go retest this and go up from there. But this is some of the most bullish activity you've ever seen if you look as far back as you want to go in the stock market. So, you know, those moments of panic, and we talked about those, and nobody, I won't say nobody, a lot of you guys here, and particularly a lot of our members, you know, we're on the same page that, hey, this is opportunity knocking right here. This is not the end of the world. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the stock market. This is not the fear and greed index being at 3. This is on a scale from 1 to 100. So 100 being extreme greed, 1 being complete 100% fear. We got to 3 and we stayed there. So to me, this was madness. This was such an obvious screaming signal that the market has dramatically overreacted. We had, you know, and I'm going to mention somebody who's a kind of a perma bull, but Tom Lee was out there doing the same thing. On this day, he was out there screaming, buy with one fist, buy with 2 fists. We are going to get a V-shaped recovery. The tariffs are going to get pulled back quickly. I mean, he was spot on. And I know he tends to be bullish. So, you know, sometimes you go, well, that's what he always says. But like this was spot on. And it mirrors what George and I were talking about. You know, and we don't know, obviously. Nobody ever knows the exact day of the bottom. We talked about that. I don't know. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? Maybe. But I know this. It's a good buying opportunity because, you know, this is what I expected. Because this is what almost, if you look at every bear market, they almost always resolve themselves in a V-shaped recovery. It's just how the market works. It's not 100%. But I bet it's north of 90%. So, you know, and this one was even faster than most. And it's not over. I think it's not over. And if you look at Bitcoin, right, here's the 1 day on Bitcoin. I mean, we bottomed on April 7th. So there's the day when everybody thought it was the end of the world. People were selling Bitcoin as fast as they could on April 7th. We're up almost 40% in a month, in 1 month and 1 week. from when everybody was in a pure panic that, was the end of the world. We were talking about, we were bringing up articles, 50,000 looks like a good line of support. Well, guess what? It never went below this, not even one single day. So, and we had a purple line right below this. So I felt like this was a very strong line of support. That doesn't mean it was going to hold. We've broken through strong lines of support. But to me, I didn't see, and then from there, I thought 69 was pretty much an invincible line of support. Yes, weird things can happen. You can't rule out anything, but that's what we were talking about is, look, if you want to look at downside, upside, you've got the downside to a line of support almost where we are, and then one not too far off at that point. That was just, that was a 7% move to the downside. But conversely, if we ran back up to our previous all-time high, that was a 47% move to the upside. And it looks to me like we're about to do that. We made a huge run up to, you can see we've had this purple line here forever. This has been resistance, and we've done almost a week of consolidation here. So it's either going to do George's scenario, right, where maybe we go retest a line. I don't know. Is it this 99,800 line? I have this line at 99.8. A lot of people have it at 100. Somewhere between 98 and 100,000. Maybe we go retest that. If we do, I'm going to buy. You guys don't have to do that. Everybody, please, obviously, do your own due diligence. And you can see, like this chart right here shows you the volatility. But I think if we do that, then it's the next move after that is through our previous all-time high, is my opinion. That's my feeling. And I know we're starting to get into greed. So if we look on the fear and greed index now, the market overall is in greed. So this went from 3, the most fear the market's ever seen in its history. A month later, it's at the top of greed, about to hit extreme greed. The crypto...
That could be the quickest it's ever done that, Tom.
I've never seen anything like it. We see it bounce around, but you're right. To go from the bottom of extreme fear to extreme greed in 5 or 6 weeks that's the market being wildly irrational. And we're getting more and more and more of that. We get, and it's big money taking advantage of us. Make no mistake. They are getting better at this game, and retail investors are losing worse, and big money is winning more. Somebody wants me to color my hair. My hair, it has gotten a little gray, but also there's this new light that's set up in here, and it makes it...
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, it looks a lot more gray, and I'm looking at what I look like on screen. It doesn't look like that in real life, but I'm getting older. I'm getting some more gray hair. That's what happens.
You're a lot older than me.
A lot older?
You got me by a whole year.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
I don't know.
We're practically the same age. But you look
right,
years younger,
Talkin
George.
Yeah, sure.
Old Jock, member for 27 months. Thank you very much. Old Jock said, anyone able to name all 3 of Tom's boomer albums on the wall? I'm not a boomer. For the record, Old Jock, not that there's anything wrong with being a boomer, but I am not a boomer.
Saying, can you name them?
Can you name the 3 albums? That's a great, thank you, Old Jock. There's a fun trivia question right there. I don't know if my head's in the way and you can see him. I'm guessing Old Jock's got all 3 of them down if he asked the question.
Tom, what's an album?
Yeah, exactly. What's a album? What's a CD? So MicroStrategy to 20K is pointing out that MicroStrategy still this year is beating every single Bitcoin miner, which is true. So let's go to that. So
I found out how to turn on closed captioning too, by the way.
you found something that I haven't done here that we can do?
Yeah, it's on Zoom. I'll talk to you later about it.
Oh,
But
is
it
it
works really
Zoom that's
well.
ruining it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Well, then we'll try to get that in place for next time. Yeah, because most things are over my head on the tech support side of this world anyway. But if you look year to date, MicroStrategy is up 38%. So I want to go year to date for all the Bitcoin miners because we looked at the month of May, which is fantastic. But unfortunately for the year, that still leaves almost every single Bitcoin miner in the red. CleanSpark is the number one Bitcoin miner year to date, up 6%. MicroStrategy's up 38%. Marathon's the number two Bitcoin miner. So remember when I said this is this week, CleanSpark and Marathon were lagging? Well, one of the reasons for that is these guys had a lot of catching up to do because whereas CleanSpark and Marathon on the week were in last place, if you go year to date, CleanSpark and Marathon are in first place and second place. CleanSpark turned green. They're up 6%. Marathon's about to turn green. They're down 3%. Also, the companies that hodl, and this is what I said coming into the year, and I believe so even more than ever, the companies that have big hodl positions, and those are really four companies, one of which is really kind of getting out of Bitcoin, which is HUT. So, they mine very little Bitcoin right now. But the three companies that have big mining operations and big hodl stacks are CleanSpark, Marathon, and Riot. And they are ranked 1, 2, and 3 year to date. Iron is not that far behind them. HUT with a big stack is not that far behind them. Iron's financial statements were fantastic. The question with Iron is, Iron turned a profit straight up. They have the lowest cost per coin. They control their overhead. Their financial statements were excellent. The one question you have to ask yourself with Iron, and I do hold Iron, it's one of my positions because I want to hedge my bets and be a little diverse. They are really all in on high performance computing. So they're not holding a single Bitcoin. They sell every Bitcoin, and they've said, we're getting to 52 exahash, which they're almost at, and they expect to be at in the next 45 days. And then they're going to take a pause on growing. Now, that's, 50-something exahash. That makes them one of the biggest Bitcoin miners. So it's not like they've neglected that part of the business. But what they want to do is take every one of those Bitcoin from now on, sell them, pay for operations, and then take the rest of the money to build out their high-performance computing infrastructure. So that is their stated goal. That's what their game plan is. So, this is more of it's a dual bet, are they going to keep making a lot of money on Bitcoin? I think they will. Their cost per coin is just phenomenal. This is a really efficient company, and there's no reason to believe that's going to change. But, are they going to get big high-performance computing contracts? And the other thing about these high-performance computing contracts, if you look at Core Scientific, you will see these can take years from the time you sign a contract. Core Scientific has signed multi-billion dollars worth of contracts with CoreWeave, and their revenue for the quarter from that was $8 million. I mean, still almost all their revenue is from mining Bitcoin, which they've basically abandoned, but it's still the vast majority of their revenue. A year and a half from now, that will not be true. They will have more revenue from high-performance computing. They will have more gross profit from high-performance computing. And my guess is they're actually getting out of Bitcoin mining. So I'm going to take a look at a chart and show you a couple of companies, 4 that I think are out of Bitcoin mining. They just haven't said so yet, but I think we're going to see it play out over the rest of the year. $80 likes. Thank you very much, everybody. Much appreciated. We're going for 100. If you guys could hit the like button, if you just got here, or if you're able to, or if you have not yet hit the like button, it does help the stream out a lot. And we did. We don't want to ever fail again. In 3 years, we failed one time at getting 100 likes during the live stream. And that was 2 weeks ago, which was one of my 10 pieces of evidence that the market has bottomed. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of these Bitcoin miners turn green. Right? Their only CleanSpark is green year to date in 2025. Bitcoin's up 11%. So it's outperforming every single Bitcoin miner. MicroStrategy's up 38%. It's outperforming every Bitcoin miner. I will tell you, I made a trade. I got to go into my pocket because I took some notes. Let's see if I got them. So I'm going to track this trade with everybody, and I'll make a spreadsheet. I sold all my MicroStrategy. So I did this simultaneously. I had a sell order at break even. So I sold all my MicroStrategy. I know a lot of people are going to be a hater on that. I'm not saying MicroStrategy is a bad investment. It outperformed every single Bitcoin miner in 2024. It's outperforming every single Bitcoin miner in 2025. I think it's going to have a good 2025, but I think the Bitcoin miners have lagged so far behind that this is their year. So I have a higher level of conviction. It's not that I don't like MicroStrategy, which is now called Strategy, but I do like. So what I did is, and I marked down the exact dollar amounts. I sold MicroStrategy at $349.73, and I split the proceeds 40% into Riot, 40% into Hive. I'm sorry, 40% into Iron, 40% into Hive, and 20% into Riot. So that's a 40-40-20 split. And I bought Iron, this was all the same day, at $6.17, Hive at $1.71, and Riot at $7.60. I'm going to make that chart and follow along with you guys. I don't know how this is going to play out. We'll see. Was this a great trade or a stupid trade? Right? Is MicroStrategy going to beat all the Bitcoin miners again, and this was a dumb trade? I don't know. I feel particularly, so let me show you the next chart, and I'll show you why I did this. So I didn't rearrange these in order. Oh, no, that's not really where I wanted to go. I actually want to go to this one. Hold on. Let me just give me 30 seconds and I'll just fix this and we can look at these the right way. Get this back onto Bitcoin one day while we're looking. Give me 10 more seconds. I'm just putting them in order. And we can take a look. And I try to I have a lot of different charts, obviously, and I don't show every single one of them every week, but I try to look at this in as many different ways as I possibly can, because you never know where you're going to find some insight or some outlying number that maybe leads you to believe that there's an opportunity somewhere that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have been looking at. So I try to slice and dice this as much as I can. So what I'm looking at is this chart is what the Bitcoin miners have done from the cycle low. So each one of these is a different date. But whenever they hit their low, all of them was in the year 2022. Most of these were in the last week of December of 2022. They hit their low at the bottom of the crypto winter. So this is where they've run since their lows. You've got Cypher up 900%. Core Scientific went through bankruptcy, and that's up some astronomical number that's off the charts. So putting that aside, you've got Cypher up over 900%. Iron's up 725% from the bottom of the crypto winter. Bitcoin's up 571%. So in the time Bitcoin's gone up 571%, Hive is up 52%. By the way, a month and a half ago, it took out its low from the bottom of the crypto winter. So that's when I was making this trade. It was actually lower at Bitcoin 85,000 than it was at Bitcoin 15,000. So, and you can see it's still viciously lagging behind the rest of these Bitcoin miners. And I'm going to go to a press release they put out today. That's a series of smaller press releases, but I think they're important. And I think Hive's going to do a lot of catching up. I'm not saying they're going to run to the top of this list, but if they just get themselves in the middle of this list, that's a potential, 5, 6, 7, 8x on this thing. So we'll see. So that's why I jumped into Hive. You'll see Riot I jumped in because that is near the bottom as well. And Iron is already up gigantically, but it's still 47% off of its highs from the last 12 months. And with the financial statements they just had, and we knew we've seen their financial performance. They tell us what their cost per coin is. So we pretty much know what's all these people who are shocked or dismayed when they see the financial statements just aren't reading the monthly operational updates. Yes, there is more comprehensive information in a 10Q than there is in a monthly update, but you pretty much get the gist of it. You shouldn't really be shocked unless there's some weird outlying numbers like monumental pay to management or massive stock dilution that you didn't anticipate or a one-time write-off of something you knew nothing about. So those are the types of things that can pop up, but not much of not much of that happened. So, but obviously, you still got to read the 10Ks and the 10Qs and at least know what's going on. But to me, if you look at this just from the last, this isn't their all-time highs. So this does not measure from these companies' all-time highs. Every single one of these companies, their all-time high is double or triple or quadruple what I'm measuring from. I'm just measuring to their highs from the last 12 months. So you can see most of these have to go up dramatically just to get back to their 12-month high. And then, from the bottom of the crypto winter, I'm measuring everything against Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners should outperform Bitcoin. And for this to be doing a tenth of what Bitcoin is doing, I feel like there's a big run left in Hive. A big run. But, again, I got to say it's not financial advice, and you guys got to do your own due diligence because they're a smaller company. They have less exahash than most of the other companies that we looked at. But I want to go to the press release they just put out because it's a big deal, in my opinion. So two things. The first thing is, and they did these, I think, on the same day, they used their $180 million at the market offering, and they added basically roughly another $120 million to it, making this $300 million, $180 million of which is already used. So there will be a little more at the market offering. However, with that in mind, they addressed this. They just put this out 2 days ago. Hive Digital Technologies surpasses 8 exahash. Now, it was just a few weeks ago they put one out that said they reached 7 exahash. As Bitcoin hash rate and secures ASIC orders to 25 exahash. So they have secured their orders to get from 8 exahash and put deposits down to get to 25 exahash. But more than just putting deposits down, let me find the sentence. Hive has now fully funded its ASIC orders to grow to 18 exahash. So they came into this year at 6. They want to come out of this year at 25. And they're already funded, and they've already gone from 6 to 8, and they're funded to get to 18 in Q3, and then 20, and then the rest of it they're not yet funded for, but they want to get to 25 by December 31st, and they have the purchase orders in and deposits down on the rest of the machines to get there. So even if they just do most of this, you know, a lot of these Bitcoin miners find, you know, hitting these goals on target, on time, to be very challenging. But, you know, even if they get up to, you know, 14 or 15 exahash in Q3 and 20 to 22 exahash by the end of the year, you know, if they triple their exahash or potentially quadruple their exahash in the year 2025, I think that means that their stock is going to have a very good year. They're going to start posting numbers like we haven't seen them post in a long time. By the way, the 8 exahash they have, they replaced their whole fleet. So none of these are the old machines. Not every one of them is the absolute latest and greatest, but they spent the year 2024 very slowly replacing their entire fleet. And obviously the ones that have not arrived yet are the latest and greatest. So, you know, I think there's good things coming for Hive. They're way behind all of the competition as far as the performance of their stock. So that's why I added to Hive. That's why I think there's more upside to Hive. Those are my thoughts. George, you're getting smaller. It looks like you're falling into a black hole. Can you hear us? Let's end this poll. Are you bullish or bearish on Bitcoin? Okay, so 86% are bullish, and we got almost 100 votes on this, so thanks everybody for participating in the poll. 86% are bullish over the next 30 days on Bitcoin. 14% are bearish. So that's overwhelmingly bullish. Going to ask you guys what you think about, since we just talked about it. All right, so let's see. I told you guys where I stand on Hive and what my thoughts are. What do you think? What do you think about Hive stock for the rest of 2025? Number one, is it a screaming buy? Number two, is it a cautious buy? Number three, would you just hold it? Or number four, you would not buy this, and if you hold it, you would sell it. So it's don't buy, steer clear. What's everybody think about Hive? And I know this is one of the smaller companies, but if they get to their 25 exahash like they expect to by the end of the year, they're going to move way up the list. So if we look at that list, this is not it. That was a long time ago. Okay, so this was as of March. I haven't done April yet, and I'm going to show you why next. Marathon was at 54 exahash at the end of March. They grew that in April. CleanSpark at 42, Iron at 37. They're now, you know, in the 40s. Riot at 33. They're actually kind of stabilized. Bitfarms at 19.5. They're kind of stabilized. Core Scientific, they continue to decrease their exahash every single month for like 9 or 10 months in a row. Cypher 13.5. So you see Hive's all the way in last place at 6.4. Well, we now know they just put out a press release. They're not at 6.4 anymore. They're at 8.0. That's just behind HUT. And I'm going to talk about HUT because they didn't put out a monthly operational report. So if they can get from 6 to 25, now obviously some of these companies will make some moves in the middle as well. But it's going to get them way out of this 10th position place. And it's probably going to get them ahead of Bitfarms. Bitfarms has said they are not going to dramatically grow their exahash for the next 18 months. Now, I think they will change their tune if their stock gets over $2. You know, this stock got down to 67 cents. It was insanity, in my personal opinion. And they certainly were not going to dilute themselves at 67 cents a share to go buy Bitcoin mining machines. That would have been a stupid thing to do, and they didn't do it. Instead, they went and borrowed $300 million, and they're going to grow their high-performance computing portion of their business. They hired 2 high-end consulting firms in the industry. They're building out high-performance computing, and they want to be a hybrid of a Bitcoin miner. They want 2 revenue streams. Bitcoin mining, you know, which they've been in 5th place. So if we look at the number of Bitcoin mined, in March, 280 Bitcoin mined, and we'll look at April. They've been in 5th place pretty much every single month for the last year. So this is a strong company. This is one of the lowest market caps, but they mine the 5th most Bitcoin month after month after month, and they did so again in the month of April, which we'll look at in a minute. So my point of that is,
like them, Tom. I got to give you that.
I know sometimes it seems like I'm a cheerleader for them, but it's just because here, let's take a look at something, because I think I got this up. If you go to Bitfarms, and this is just insane to me, their market cap is $636 million. Like I said, almost every stock on the list is between $1 billion and $5 billion market cap. Bitfarms is $636 million, but I want to show you something. Here's Bitfarms' financial statements. Their retained earnings, their equity is $664 million. That's more than their market cap. They're trading at less than 1x book. That's not how this works. So,
what do you think the multiplier should be on Bitcoin miners?
You know, when they spike, it can be dramatic. It can be 5 or 10. We've seen that in the past. So, you know, 1 versus 10 is a 10x. I'm not saying Bitfarms is going to 10x, but I am saying trading at less than book value, to me, seems like ridiculousness. It just doesn't make sense. So that's kind of why I talk about operationally, they are performing very well. Their company on the management side, they had problems at the CEO. They fired their CEO. He sued the company. They switched out some board of director seats. Riot made a move to try to, do a hostile takeover. And by the way, I want to show you some stuff right now. Riot's given up. That's over. And I'll tell you why I say that, right? And obviously they haven't told me that, and I don't know any inside information on this matter. But if you look at, this is September 23rd, 2024. So Bitfarms had to put this out regarding Riot's position in them. Riot owned 90,110,000 shares of Bitfarms. That was 19.9%. That's the maximum they could own without the poison pill kicking in. So again, last September, 90.1 million shares. Okay, so if we look at the filing they just put out last month, 90.1 million shares. They have not bought one single share of Bitfarms in the last 9 months. They now own 16.3% of Bitfarms. So this scenario where Riot takes out Bitfarms, I continue to say it's a pipe dream. You can see they're not pursuing it because they have actually a special clause, a first option to keep buying to maintain that 19.9% position, and they're not doing it. Not only are they not doing that, they literally have not bought a single share of this company in 9 months. So they're slowly, because of stock dilution, they own less and less of the company. And, at some point, I think they're just going to get rid of this. It doesn't, It doesn't make any sense that they're a 16% owner in their direct competition. They took a shot. If it worked, it was going to be a big win for them. If they got, if they were able to get Bitfarms for pennies on the dollar, good for them. That would have been a coup. That would have been great, but it didn't happen, and it's over. That's my opinion. And if you look at, I'm going to go to another chart. If you look at Bitfarms stock, this may not look like much. Bitfarms closed at $1.15 today. This got down to 67 cents a month ago. We were once again having the conversation in the chat. They're going to have to do a reverse stock split. They're never going to see $1 ever again. Well, here we go with another V-shaped recovery, and this doesn't look like a lot, but if you go from 67 cents to where they are today, this is almost a 70% move to the upside in Bitfarms in the last 1 month and 1 week. So about 5 weeks. A 68, 69, very close to 70% move to the upside. So, that's why I'm pounding the table about Bitfarms. And that's why I was really losing my mind here. Because this was just, there's no, and this is where the stock market can be irrational. So you got to be careful and look for those opportunities. This was, in my mind, and here was April 8th was that bottom. That's the day that I bought all the stocks that I own. I bought some of the biggest purchases I've made in the last year on April 8th. And because it was a screaming bottom. And you can see that on this chart now. But the point is, it's up, 70%, but is it too late? Well, ask yourself this, right? If you go back, just to get back to where it was in February is another 30%. Just to get back to where it was in the middle of December, that's almost a double. That's 86% just for this to get back to where it was in December. They're a better company today than they were in December. So, and Bitcoin's, looks like it's about to take out its all-time high. So a lot of these charts from a technical standpoint look very, very good to me. They may have some pullbacks, but to me, those will be buying opportunities. Those any resets or retests. If Bitfarms somehow retests $1 from here, which they could easily do, they're only at $1.15, then I'll buy again.
Buy, sell, hold. You're just crazy, Tom.
Well, here's another. We looked at this chart on the day on this day where we broke above this line. This is Bitfarms or Bitcoin. Sorry, I got Bitfarms on the brain. This is Bitcoin on the 1-day time frame. So going back to January of 2025, for the entire year, there was this descending line of resistance. It just could not. It candle wicked above it. Like all these days in a row, it candle wicked above it, but it continued to close below the line, 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 below the line every single time. So the second this broke out, we got some consolidation above this and then a giant move to the upside for Bitcoin. So these patterns are real. They're not everything, and no one technical thing. You should not bet the farm on one technical thing that you see. But when they all start to add up, when 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 of them are telling the same story, you can start to get a really high level of confidence that, over a reasonable time frame, a certain outcome is, not inevitable, but highly likely. So there was this signal, and then to me, this was the biggest one of all. And we've been talking about this all year, really. This is Bitcoin on the 1 week time frame. This formed a bearish divergence over the year 2024. It hit a higher high in December of 2024 when it reached its new all-time high. That was a higher high for Bitcoin, But if you look at the 1 week RSI, this hit 90 back in March, but it only hit just under 80 here when we got to our all-time high. So that is a lower high on the RSI. So when you have a lower high on the RSI and a higher high on Bitcoin, that is a bearish divergence. And we said on the 1 week time frame, that's not going to play out over a week. That's going to take months, right? When you look at divergences on bigger time frames, and 1 week is a larger time frame. We're used to looking at 4 hours or 1 day. So when you stretch it out to the 1 week, we said this is probably going to be 2, 3, 4 months. And sure enough, it was 2 or 3 or 4 months, right? From the peak here, December 16th, to the bottom here, April 7th. There you go. There's 4 months right there. So this pulled back for 4 months. And then what happened? If you look at the MACD, right, simultaneous with all that, we got a bearish crossover on the 1 week MACD. Well, last week, and it was just ever so slightly, you can barely see this green line on the histogram, but you can see this crossover. We now have a bullish crossover on the Bitcoin 1 week time frame. In the past several times that has happened, that has meant a big move up in Bitcoin, right? We got one right here. Right here. So, if you go and I'm going to go back further because I will tell you, I started pounding the table around here. Again, this pink line, this was that April 8th day where I felt like we had bottomed out. And when you start to see when these lines on the histogram turn from red to pink and they get smaller, that means the bears are losing momentum. That is the point at which the bears started to lose momentum and the bulls started to take control. And we have seen most of the time in the weeks preceding a bullish crossover, a nice run up in Bitcoin. Just like we went from red to pink right here the last time. So if you look at what Bitcoin did, right, this was the bottom of that red candle. So before the bullish crossover, which happened this week, we had a 21% move to the upside. But in total, from the bottom, we had a 106% move to the upside the last time we had a bullish crossover from the bottom to the top. And the time before that, I mean, man, you got to go back to some crazy low numbers. The time before that was right here. This was our bullish crossover. So what was the run that time? 173%. So is it a guarantee? No. But history would dictate, and again, this is just one indicator, but when you get this many lining up in a row, I think what you're looking at is an awful lot of confirmation that the bull run is back on. These are weekly candles. We just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green weekly candles. And after 4 green weekly candles in a row, we had the biggest green weekly candle of them all for the 5th one. So this was some serious momentum. We've already, we're just 1 week into the bullish crossover, and we've already had a 40% move to the upside on Bitcoin. So is it reasonable to believe that we're going to, Bitcoin's going to pull a double from this 75,000? That's the $150,000 price target that I think we're going to, we got to get through our previous all-time high at around 109. We got to break through 120. I think we're going to see a little resistance, and then to 150. So I think that happens as a part of this bullish crossover we just had. But you can see that could be a 2 or 3 or 4 month journey or longer. So I'm not saying it's headed there instantaneously, but I do think that, all signs point to, big picture, we are going higher.
We better be, Tom.
Because you've had about enough of this?
Yep. I was realizing, I bet you I've lost more money trading Bitcoin miner stocks than most people.
You've gotten, it's a tale of two stories for you.
Yeah, it really is.
The Bitcoin miners have been brutal for you and for everybody. However, you did something very big, and it was at least a year ago. You shifted into start building some pretty substantial positions in Bitcoin, and about 3 years ago, you started building some substantial positions in XRP. Those two things, you are killing it on those two things.
Thanks for reminding me, Tom.
Well, sometimes you got to put it in perspective, because I know when you look at your other portfolio where your Bitcoin miners are, it's just depressing.
Oh, my goodness, ever.
But, you know, you got the other side of the equation. You're crushing
I was going to, I mean, I lost more than the cost of a Ferrari, Tom. And not a used Ferrari either.
I know it's been a tough run, but I think good things are ahead. I think we just, I'll take a last look at the month of May, because it's.
But you're right. Overall, I'm up.
Yeah, that other side of the equation, both of those. You got into Bitcoin before it went off, and obviously you got into XRP. It's up 600%, 700%, 800% since you got in. So, and I think it's due for its next breakout. So I don't think XRP is done either. So Hive, the 62% said either a screaming buy or a cautious buy, 15% hold, 23% would just stay away from Hive. So a little bit of a mixed bag. And only time will tell, but I will post that trade that I made where I got out of MicroStrategy and I did 40% Iron, 40% Hive, 20% Riot. So I'm going to track those. I'll make a little spreadsheet, and we'll see the rest of the year if that turns out to be a winning trade or a losing trade. Just, it'll be fun to watch. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a winning trade, but maybe I'm wrong. What are you thinking, George?
There's so much going on. I haven't even told you guys what's going on. I might be going to Washington next week.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it off air, but it's.
Oh, boy.
Let's just say Congress hit something and is talking about something I have a lot of knowledge about. And somebody reached out to me today. And if you want to think that it's going to get ugly for these insurance companies, they don't want me going up, because I record every conversation I have with everybody.
And George's business is
these people
interact.
We have. Oh my goodness, you have no idea, Tom, what's getting ready to happen. They said they're reconvening the end of next week, and they're recalling these guys back up. You want to get to see criminal charges? I got them on criminal charges. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, they don't want me to go and testify.
It's funny because one of our biggest numbers that's hurting inflation is insurance.
Right. No, I mean, it's what they. Oh, have you heard about this? Have you heard about what's going on?
No, you're gonna have to fill me in.
Oh, it's real interesting. If anybody's interested, just type in Allstate in front of Congress and then watch the videos. But it's.
Well, good luck.
They haven't even talked about the smoking guns. That's the stuff that they need to talk about. And once that hits, Tom, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. I'm talking short the snot out of these freaking companies.
Not financial advice.
I mean, I can't even, not financial advice, but this, it's epidemic. It's what they've done to these insureds. It's just awful.
Well, I'll be fascinated to hear about that. Midway One said Bitcoin will be going higher for longer. Agreed. To borrow Jerome Powell's terminology, we're going to be higher for longer. Because I think 150 is just a stop along the way. I think we'll then retest some numbers, and I don't think the bull market's over. You know, there was a lot of stuff we didn't get. Let's just do one or two things real quick before we leave, because I think they're worth talking about, especially since I alluded to them.
I don't even think it's really started, honestly.
The Bitcoin run?
Yeah, absolutely not.
I agree. I don't think it starts until we break our previous all-time high.
Yeah.
And then we start going from there. I want to get to a few stories so that they don't get just left in the dust, especially since I talked about this one at the beginning of the stream and then never showed it. Wisconsin sells their entire $350 million spot Bitcoin ETF stake. So they were invested in IBIT. Remember I told you a lot of people were selling in February and March. And on the other side, Goldman Sachs was increasing their position by 300 and 400% in the Bitcoin miners. I don't know what they were doing with Bitcoin. But here's Wisconsin panic selling. They bought all this Bitcoin in the fourth quarter of 2024, and they panic sold all of it in the first quarter of 2025. So, you know, they lost their ass on this. And since then, Bitcoin has skyrocketed. So that's awesome. This is a learning, right? This is not a hedge fund. This is the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. So they got egg on their face. That's a big mistake. First of all, massive buying and then panic selling all of it in the next quarter is a bad look regardless. But, you know, then to have it work out, you bought at the high and sold at the low, and then it turned around and went right straight back up. That's not a good look for the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. So we'll see if they start over and try again. But I thought that was a interesting story. These are just some miscellaneous tidbits. Steak and Shake. Let me know in the comments if there's a Steak and Shake in your area. It's a a national or international chain, I'm not sure. They will now be accepting Bitcoin for payment. It's a fast food place. You can sit inside, you can go through the drive-thru, and they're going to be accepting Bitcoin. So it has begun. Right, I think
Tom, did you didn't talk about XRP and that company that's making all their subs get on XRP?
Get out of XRP?
No, all their subs they got to take, and they're going to get paid in XRP. Remember?
Oh yeah. Let me see if I still have that up somewhere. Dun, 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 dun. Give me a second.
It's real, baby. I heard an estimate. Oh, and there's another thing that people aren't talking about with XRP, by the way. And it is I won't say, never mind.
I don't have that article up anymore, but I did have another XRP article. Okay, so here, XRP prices could blast higher to $3.40 as major bearish pattern fails. So, for whatever that's worth, here's somebody predicting short-term $3. So this was a failed head and shoulders pattern. So a reverse head and shoulders pattern is bullish. A head and shoulders pattern, for those of you who care at all about any of this technical stuff, head and shoulders pattern, you know, if it crosses below the neckline, that's a confirmation and it's a bearish sign, and you're probably going to go a lot lower. But this head and shoulders apparently failed, which is very bullish. So, and we know, right, if we go to XRP.
Tom, I'm going to grab dinner. Thanks, everybody.
All right, have a good night, George. Have a good weekend.
To the moon.
To the moon. Quickly, I'll just note that Strategy bought another 13,390 Bitcoin. So they continue to add to their already by far biggest stack of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company. Self-owned Bitcoin, this is not custodied for others. This is theirs. 568,840 Bitcoin for Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, and obviously this is Michael Saylor, as you guys I'm sure know. So they continue to buy heavily, right? They had a 1 or 2 week period where they pulled back just a tiny little bit, and now they're back at it big time. I mean, 13,390 Bitcoin in a week. To put it in perspective, if they held no Bitcoin coming into this week and they just did this, I think that would make them the fourth or fifth largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company, just the Bitcoin they bought this week. So that's how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy has. In second place is Marathon with a little less than 50,000 Bitcoin. In third place is Riot with a little less than 20,000 Bitcoin. And I believe now in fourth place is CleanSpark with over 12,000 Bitcoin. So after MicroStrategy, or Strategy as they now prefer to be called, it's 3 Bitcoin miners that are in second, third, and fourth. And, I suspect those 3 will continue to add to their hodl position, which is why I'll just finish on this chart. If I go year to date, you'll see here's those 3 companies, CleanSpark, Marathon, and Riot. These 3 companies have the biggest hodl positions, and these 3 companies are in first, second, and third place performance-wise out of all the Bitcoin miners this year. I think that they're going to continue to outperform the rest of the companies at an increasing rate between now and the end of the year. So I expect these to be the winners. I expect a lot of these to be the winners. Not all of them, right? There's some of these companies. So I said I was going to finish with this, but I got to show one more thing. We already have 2 companies that have officially said they're not doing any more monthly operational updates. They are Bit Digital, and Bit Digital, in my mind, is now completely out of Bitcoin mining. It's insignificant to them. They have rebranded their business with a different name to do high-performance computing, so I'm taking them off the list altogether. They're really just, if I go backwards here a little, we'll see the last time they did report, which was in January, they mined 28.7 Bitcoin. So they really weren't mining Bitcoin anyway. So they're gone. TeraWulf has stopped monthly reporting, and they had a plan to get to 13.1 exahash. It looks like they're going to execute that plan. They were over 12 exahash when they reported their quarterly operations, but they are not doing monthly reports anymore. And this is a company that has said they're going to allocate 2/3 of their infrastructure to high-performance computing. So I think you've got TeraWulf that's no longer a Bitcoin-first mining company. Not to say they won't mine Bitcoin, but this is not a Bitcoin mining company anymore, in my opinion. You've got HUT, which announced this week that they're spinning off. I don't know, maybe we didn't talk about this, so this will be the last thing we talk about. HUT 8 subsidiary American Bitcoin announces go public transaction. So HUT 8 moved all of their Bitcoin mining infrastructure into a subsidiary that they are an 80% shareholder in, and that's called American Bitcoin Mining. Well, now they've announced American Bitcoin Mining is going to get bought in a stock-only transaction by Griffin. Now, American Bitcoin Mining is 100 times the size of Griffin. So the American Bitcoin Mining shareholders are going to end up with 98%. I think it says this in here somewhere. Well, I won't bore you with tracking it down, but they're going to end up with 98% of the stock. And So at that point, and I'm going to show you a slide from their investor presentation, what they just put out in May. So here, Q1 2025 priorities. Originate. They want to go, they say 2.6 gigawatts of exclusivity. They don't have that much actively working, not even close. But apparently they have exclusive rights to that. They want to get to 8.2 gigawatts. I mean, most other, even the big Bitcoin mining companies are at 1 gigawatt trying to work their way towards 2 gigawatts. So 8 gigawatts is monumental. But then you'll see the second half of this chart, American Bitcoin, their strategy is to decouple investments in ASIC compute from our broader capital allocation framework. So they want to decouple with Bitcoin mining. They're saying it right here. So they're taking their subsidiary that they own 80% of. They've moved all of their ASICs into that subsidiary, and that subsidiary is merging with a different publicly traded company. That publicly traded company, Griffin, is changing their name to American Bitcoin Mining, and that's going to be its own thing. So if you buy shares of Hut 8, it's if and when this closes, and they're targeting the third quarter, Hut 8's no longer going to be in the Bitcoin mining business. They will have sold this off, and there will be a different publicly traded company. Griffin will rename themselves American Bitcoin Mining, and that will be what was once the Hut 8 Bitcoin mining. So I think Hut 8's out of the business, right? They're not out yet, but they did not put out a monthly report for the month of April. Now, it's May 16th. Last month, they put it out on the 4th day of the month. It's now the 16th day of the month. So maybe they'll still put it out. I am doubtful. Core Scientific did not put a monthly operational report out this month. We know how many Bitcoin they mined this month because on Twitter, they tell us every single day. But they did not put out a monthly operational report reviewing their overall operations. And you'll see every single month down, if you look at their hash rate month over month, down 0.3%, down 0.1%, down 0.6%, down 0.2%, down 0.4%. They just continue to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. They don't buy any new machines. Their cost per coin, because their fleet is aged and outdated, is the highest of any of the Bitcoin mining companies based on looking at the quarterly financial statements. So it looks to me like, they understand still 90+% of their revenues from Bitcoin mining. And that is because even though they have multi-billion-dollar contracts in high-performance computing, the lead time on these contracts to get from signed contract to revenue, recognized revenue, is significant. So it's going to take a while. Maybe this time next year, they'll, be showing significant revenue from their high-performance computing. And, this, I think, will just continue to wind down and go away. They certainly aren't allocating any resources and have not. Since they came out of bankruptcy, they have allocated no resources to adding Bitcoin mining machines. In fact, they continue to reduce and take the ones offline that are no longer profitable. So that seems to be the course to me. So I've put in this sky blue color here, Core Scientific, Hut, Wolf, and BitDeer. To me, I think a year from now, you're going to see these guys really won't have anything to do with Bitcoin mining, in my opinion. So that is my parting thought. Obviously, that's just my personal opinion. None of this is financial advice. I will also leave you with the parting thought that this was a very good week for the Bitcoin miners. Today was a very good day for the Bitcoin miners. So let's hope we have a strong weekend. I hope you guys all enjoy your weekend. Thank you, everybody, so much. We did cross 100 likes, so it's much appreciated. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. If you're watching this later, thanks for doing a watch through. And everybody have a great weekend, and go Bitcoin.